So I decided to make a video about some of the YouTube test tracks that I use whenever I set up a stereo. Setting up speakers, you know, it's supposed to be straightforward. You put the positive to the positives and the negatives to the negatives, but it doesn't always quite work out that way. So I always run some tests to make sure that everything is good. I'm going to take you through a few of these. I'm going to put them all in the description so you don't have to try to figure out what I'm looking at right here. First one is left, right, and out of phase test that I like to run by Beaten Vision. But like I said, I'll put it in the description. Okay, this is a simple test. It tests left and right to make sure that you got your speakers hooked up left and right. Most people get that right. But it also tests polarity, which some people miss. Or more importantly, sometimes speakers can be funnily wired, especially if you get vintage stuff and someone's been in it. You never know. It could be wired incorrectly. So it's always prudent to test. So let's let this run, and you'll hear when there's an in-phase signal put out, and then there's an out-of-phase signal put out, and you can hear the difference. Should have a nice center image right now. Left and right. And coming up here is where you're going to hear a normal signal. This should be very centered. Should be right in front of you. Precise. Now they're going to switch the phase. This should sound odd. This should sound like the sound is like they're not coming from the speakers even. This is an easy test because if the out of phase sounds good and the in phase doesn't sound right, there's something wrong with your speakers hooked up. And it's an easy test to run. It's quick. Just do it as a sanity test. You only have to do it once, then you never have to do it again, but it's a good thing to run. Let's let it play here just a little bit more. In phase, sounds right, image is centered. Out of phase, it sounds like it's coming from the rear even. It just sounds odd. You'll hear this sound, and as you get used to it, you'll be able to tell the difference. In phase, out of phase. That's the phase test. The next one, number 2 test, is a Soundstage test by Woo Audio. And this is another real simple one. It puts a signal to the left, then it puts a signal to the center, and it puts a signal to the right. It's pretty much self-explanatory. I'll just tell you, I'll let you listen to it here, and then we'll talk about it halfway through.
My voice should appear to come from a single point at the far left of your soundstage. My location should be exact and well focused.
My voice should appear to come from a single point in the center of your soundstage. My location should be exact and clearly focused. No part of my voice should appear to come from the left or the right channel.
My voice should appear to come from a single point at the far right of your soundstage. My location should be exact and well focused.
Now that's pretty self-explanatory. The subtlety here is, first of all, if your speakers aren't set up right, you won't get that center image. And when she's talking about my voice should sound like it's in the center, you won't get that at all. But assuming your speakers are set up right, you'll get that image in the center. But now you can even try to get a feel for how precise it is. Is it a fine point in the center of your soundstage, or is it washed out? Some poor speakers, I will say, have the center image kind of blossoming, where it sounds like it's coming from the center, but it sounds like it's coming from the whole center, as opposed to, say, right there. Let's listen to a little more. It's self-explanatory again.
My voice should appear to come from a single point in the center of your soundstage.
My voice should appear to come from a
exact and clearly
the
focused.
far right of your soundstage.
No part of my voice should appear to come from the left or the right channel.
Okay, that's the first 2 tests I like to run. We'll look at some more here in a sec. Here's another good test that does a lot of the same things, but one of the things I like about this is it will test the polarity of your tweeter, your mid-range, and your woofer. Rarely, very rarely, I have found that speakers are hooked up incorrectly internally, but I have found it. I have had to go in and fix things internally where someone miswired the tweeter. This is especially true if you've gotten a pair of speakers that someone else has worked on. Not everyone gets it right. Most people get it right, but not everyone gets it right. But here, let's take a listen to this one. These are pretty self-explanatory. I'll stop and comment where appropriate.
1, 2, 1.
That's left
two.
and right. This checks your channel levels to give you an idea. Both are equal volume. And now it does it with bass for the woofers, mid-range, and the tweeters. So that gives you a good idea of whether you got balance in your speakers or not, and whether you got a particular... It's really even useful just to check if you got a blown tweeter or something. That I've seen that happen. Next, what they do is they run a center test to make sure that your imaging is identical in the center all throughout the frequency spectrum, not just white noise. Here they run up the frequencies range. There they give you a little bit of idea of stereo width. Rather than having the image centered, I think they run out of polarity signals to both sides, so you can really tell that your left and right are equivalent in terms of producing an independent stereo image. Run up the entire frequency spectrum again. Here's a simple polarity alignment test for all frequencies. Now that does that for separate woofers, separate mid-range, and separate tweeter levels. Let's listen to that once again, and that's what's interesting about this, is it can tell you if you've got something wired incorrectly within your speaker system. Polarity for woofers, mid-range, high frequency. Then it runs through a continuous sine sweep from low frequency to high. This is good for, check to see if you have rattles or you have buzzes at certain frequencies. Maybe you have a torn driver and that can buzz a little bit at a certain frequency. This is also useful to test your ears, because as we get older, like I am, I'm 60 years old, and I can't hear above certain frequencies. About 10, 12K is all I can hear. So as this goes up, all of a sudden the sound will drop off for me in my ears. Right about there, I can't hear anything past that. Then they go through a number of other tests. I won't repeat them here. Step, sine wave, a few others. But the most interesting part about that test is the ability to test the polarity of your tweeters, your mid-ranges, and your woofers independently, which is very, very useful. This next test is a little more of a difficult test for a lot of stereo systems, but I find that it's very, very good for testing imaging. What the guy's going to do here is he's going to take a bell or a triangle tone, and he's going to walk around a circle, and he's going to ping the tone at various points, and you should be able to get an idea of where your system is imaging at these points. Now this is interesting. It's got a top-down view, and he's going to ring this bell, this triangle. And this should be clearly hearable on the left side. Now he's going to go 45-degree angle, and you should be able to hear the difference. And finally he'll get in front. Now this is one of the tougher tests I've noticed. Not all speakers image this bell correctly. Usually I get a little left or right bleed on this. I don't think I've had more than a couple of pairs of speakers that really did this test well. It's a tough test. Now to the right. And to the right farther off. Now he's going to go behind. And this is really tough. Your system's got to be good if you can image from the behind. Especially if you can get depth from behind. Then you got quite a good system going. This is a hard test. Anyway, he goes around like this. We'll fast forward here just a little bit. He eventually gets a mid-range test with the same thing, and this is kind of interesting too. So he gives you some lower frequency signals. Usually most systems handle this quite a bit better than they handle the tweeter test. There, that's directly centered for me, whereas the tweeter test was a little washed out. I'm running a pair of Klipsch KG 5.5s right now, which generally image quite well. The depth tests are especially interesting for me because it gives you a feel about how deep the soundstage is with your system. Then he runs around the back. The way these are set up is there's a stereo microphone in the center. So this is picking up sound from the rear right now. Now, if you can hear that behind you, or if there's a semblance of it from behind you, your system is a little better than some. Now, here's where we walk around. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and see if you can tell when he's behind you or not. Not all systems are good enough to display this level of soundstage, though. There, this is a good test. It was a very good test for Soundstage. The last test I'm going to show you is using a binaural microphone. This is a microphone that has two inputs about the width of a human ear, and it's designed to emulate your actual stereo hearing. This is a small orchestra with violins on the left and flutes on the right. But one of the interesting things about it is the very beginning of this video, there's an intro music that runs in a very, very circular, round behind you sound effect. And if you can hear this, let's just play it real quick. That little test actually ran in a circle. It runs behind you and then back in front of you again. So you should be able to close your eyes and clearly hear that the sound is behind you versus in front of you. Then it goes on to play a little introductory classical music. It's the Nutcracker, I believe. Yeah, Nutcracker by Tchaikovsky. And here we go. This is a good soundstage test right here. Violins on the left. The second violin should be in just a little bit more. Flutes on the right. But you should be able to pick out the sounds, the imaging of the French horn back there, right in the center. At the clarinet, a little bit off to the right. So you should be able to hear these instruments. So a good sound system is gonna literally delineate where these instruments are in space. This is probably the final test that I run usually because it gives you a good surround sound test as well. So if you find these tests useful, go ahead and hit like and maybe subscribe. It makes a difference for me and the channel. And I hope you have a great day.